This episode is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter, batch churned from single origin cream.
Like any good product, you have to start off with an amazing cream. Like for us, it's the raw material that matters. So where we get our cream from matters a lot. So we can't just buy your average supermarket grade cream. So you need real cream. You need basically the stuff they skim off the top of milk at a farm. And to get that product, we have to go to the farmers direct. So for us, we have to source our cream very carefully. We travel a lot to different farms to make sure that the cream we're getting is the real deal from different areas of Australia.
For more information, go to pepesayer.com.au.
Even in the overwhelmingness of a massive problem, to know that you can do something and you can do it every day and that you are going to make a difference every single day, that's what gets me up in the morning.
Today on Dirty Linen, we are thinking about the not so distant future. With the world's population projected to reach nearly 10 billion by 2049, there are all kinds of ways to think about how we might feed ourselves. Today, we are taking a futuristic, AI-inspired art direction. Our guest is Anna Reeves, or A.Ray. She's an interdisciplinary artist, a story maker. She's got a background in law as well, and advocacy, working against poverty. And I'm really excited to dig into what she's doing as part of her Futureology collective with Gloop Corp. I feel like I've said a lot of words, Anna, but welcome to Dirty Linen.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I don't have my fellow co-conspirator Ace Salama with me today, but yeah, he's busy still working on the exhibit as we're 2 days away, but thank you for having us.
No, it's great to have you on the show, and I feel like you would be an incredibly interesting person to meet at a party or in the checkout line, but yeah, we'd never be able to cover all the many things that you do. But how do you describe yourself and what you do?
Well, I think Futureology is our collective, our arts collective, that we're a future-focused arts collective. So pretty much everything we do is an exploration of imagined future worlds. And we basically do this through a process we call futureneering. And that helps us focus our speculative design and artwork around different scenarios. So that's sort of something what we do. We're basically obsessed with the future, even though there's probably no such thing as the future, really. Humans are very bad with understanding future timelines often. And as we are with the past, we have very different sort of views about how we view these things, but we like to look at them as more as worlds and realities. That's what we do in our practice, and it very much helps us centre around story, meaning and culture, and that's the main area that we like to work in, and we work across disciplines with different technologists and different types of people across disciplines, so we can actually learn from other disciplines and they can learn from us, and it's a really fantastic creative process to go through.
And so tell us how this intersects with food.
Well, I think I'll give you a good example of maybe if you're interested just in the futureneering process with a previous exhibition, and then I can tell you a little bit more about and what the results of that exhibition were to help you understand sort of why we go with food on this one. In our previous last exhibition, we called the Metaverse Store. We created a retail store in Little Collins Street. And in that particular exhibition, we were selling virtual products from a future metaverse. So we're exploring people's understanding of metaverse. That was last year when all that talk was happening around the metaverse, and also, GPT-3, the AI discussions was just starting. People thought we were insane. We didn't know what we were talking about last year around that kind of thing, and the idea of AI companions and our relationships to artificial intelligence, possibly in the form of virtual sentient beings that we see now having discussions around robots and those science fiction visions of the future we have had as kids and seen in movies. And in that exhibition, we had one-on-one conversations with over 5,000 people in the store, that basically some of them stayed for up to 3 hours exploring the different little products that we created, over 80 products in that particular exhibit. People from all walks of life, and what we discovered was people absolutely love engaging with the concept of the future and they loved having a space where they could actually explore their notion of future for themselves personally, but also for the world. It was a place they could explore their hopes and their fears, their relationship to AI, mental privacy, all the concerns they have around it. And in that particular exhibition, we also had a layer around virtual consumption, the idea that could virtual consumption be a means to reduce real-world overconsumption that is a huge contributor of waste? So we definitely underpin most of our exhibitions with looking at how all of our activity intersects with sustainability. It's the biggest issue we all have together collectively. So that has to inform what we do. And so coming to the Gloop Corp, because we are artists that definitely, we're site-specific artists, so we all respond to our immediate environment. So in the Metaverse store example, it was a retail store, it was an old jewellery store that we inhabited and had lots of little cabinets in it. So we had 80 products in all the cabinets. Now with Gloop Corp, it's a really fun one because it's an actual old disused factory, an old auto showroom that exists in the heart of Southbank. And it used to be the old BMW building, which is now empty at the moment. So that sort of sparked imaginations around Gloop Corp and, what a world basically would look like, exploring urban food systems. And Gloop Corp in this fictional scenario is an AI enhanced corporation that can create synthetic food to feed the population in 2049. So it started out as a corporation that wanted to seek an environmental solution in the form of synthetic food, and we've ended up with a place where people can come and collect a substance called Gloop that contains all their nutrients, that's determined by an AI, and personal to the person in front of them. So the idea of this hyper-personalisation, it's almost like technology is becoming so rapid and so hyper-personalised. That's one theme that we explore in the exhibit. But also across the lens of food, we're also looking, and in that example, we're also looking at how, in a way, how AI feeds us and how we feed AI as well. There's another layer around that. But in terms of also looking at the underlying real issues that we're really facing with some of the planetary challenges, with global temperatures reaching 1.5 degrees probably in all of our lifetime, there's no doubt that will impact our food systems. So in examining that, we're also looking at what the other side of that is, and that for some it may embrace the synthetic food where an AI determines our taste and can create a taste sensation for us, or a visual exploration through perhaps an interface with, augmented reality or extended reality, even though we're eating a fairly bland substance. So it could be that we explore how our mind food interacts with us. And on the other hand is the connection, the culinary connections around food that are so important as human beings. And we've imagined that to stand for, real food and real farming practices. We've created a counterforce called the Real Food Rebels, and they're a sort of counterforce in this scenario where they inhabit underground, a part of the quote Gloop factory, where some of the workers are part of the underground group, and they're seeking to preserve food seeds. They're seeking to have veggie swaps, those sort of things under the nose of this corporation. So there's two elements to the exhibition that people can engage and explore with around the issue.
Wow. I feel like my brain just exploded about 50 times as you were speaking then. There's so much in that, my goodness. I guess I'll just randomly say a few of the things that came up for me. So one of them was this idea of this fascination with the future, but also this terror of it, and I suppose an uncertainty about how we might fit into the real or imagined future. and I think, yeah, as you say, like our human response to so many predictions is to completely put our head in the sand and get obsessed with something on Netflix, for example, or to really embed ourselves in something very specific and personal, like a particular diet, or becoming obsessed with food that's suited to our genetic makeup, or I don't know, any kind of rabbit hole that people can go down with nutrition and personalized eating plans. And then I think was also thinking about what we often discuss on this podcast and on our other podcasts of producers, where it is a lot about those real food rebels who are getting, their hands dirty and obsessing with soil and thinking about microbes that are building their own worlds creating their own life cycles in the soil, which feeds us all. And then I went off on a tangent and thinking about can Gloop, how does Gloop, it has to come from nature somehow. So how does it come from nature? And then I also wondered, do you actually get to eat anything at this exhibition? So, so those are some of my thoughts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We couldn't do it without eating. And that's been one of the great things. So there's a wonderful process we do is collaborations with different people from disciplines. So we have done that in this occasion. And in terms of the food, we've collaborated with a chef who's actually a cordon bleu chef, who has a background in ice cream making and flavours of all extraordinary. He's known for his extraordinary ice cream flavours, Chef Gigi. He's got a fantastic Gigi's Gelato in Yarraville, where he explores and experiments with flavours like, blue cheese ice cream, for example. So we thought he could be a very interesting person to collaborate with to create this substance. And he went on a real journey, and that's what I love about the Futureology process, because he hadn't considered that there may be some foods that go extinct in our lifetime. And diving into the research, there are a number of foods that will potentially be affected. They may not entirely go extinct. In all likelihood, will probably be some GMO versions of them, or they may go down the synthetic route, or they may become more resilient in some regards. But they'll definitely be affected in a lot of extreme weather moments, like we have seen during the pandemic, or even through weather systems and droughts now. So when he was confronted with that reality as a chef saying, oh, my goodness, I might not be able to practice my art form in the way that I think I might in 20 years' time, I hadn't actually ever thought about that. I've always just, had my ingredients, and maybe things are affected by prices and things like that. But in terms of something not being there anymore, like chocolate or like coffee or like bananas or strawberries, that for a chef is significant. But he took that challenge on, and he said, I'm really glad I had the opportunity, because he then, we told him that this substance needed to be vegan. I think that is probably a direction we're all maybe heading in the future. And so he explored around creating this substance, and he definitely went through a lot of iterations to come up with now a very green looking substance.
Oh, so is the substance Gloop, or is it something?
Yes, that's the Gloop substance. So you'll go through the process when you come to the exhibition. If you are able to make it down, visitors will be able to have an interaction with, I won't give away too much, but they will be able to have an interaction with the factory itself, as in it is sentient, and it will talk to them, and it will give them their Gloop ration, and they'll be able to eat it.
Right. It's so interesting what you said, Anna, about, when you did the metaverse, and ChatGPT was just really something that no one could get, well, I couldn't get my head around. But now it's like we've all had a chance to play with it, and it's like, oh, okay, you can sort of, you realise that you're living in the future that you couldn't imagine just a year ago. How fast do you think things are changing? You're sort of exploring 2049. Like, does that seem distant, or we're on the precipice of it?
I think it is. The future we imagine is here. That's why I say it's hard to. We have a concept of future from things like science fiction, and when those technologies, and it's not always a technological thing either. There's a whole suite of things that follow from our, from Future's not just technology, it's also everything else. It's world building in every aspect of, you have to imagine an entire new world. That's why we call it a world building concept. But yeah, it's fast approaching. And I think in the sense that a lot of people have discussed AI, suddenly, it's become the mainstream, so to speak. So when you see mainstream media covering it, that's when it feels closer. But people that have been in this space for a long time have known about all these ethical issues, for example, for a long time, and we've just heard more and more and more of them. So as we said, we see hopes and fears come with anything this sort of. When we say disruptive, it's disruptive in the business world quite significantly, because it'll change the way we work, because it's giving us a boost of intelligence in some areas. And, of course, people are afraid of something that is potentially more intelligent than them, and because they've seen The Terminator, or they've seen sort of movies that have explored those darker sides of what can happen. But in terms of food, I think the most exciting thing, and I'm sure you've spoken to many folks who are working on future food ideas and solutions and culinary explorations. I think what's exciting is what is happening just even locally, and our local, collaborations around people wanting to have more community gardens and wanting to grow veggies on their balconies and things like that. And maybe that sprang from, sadly, pandemic times or things like that. But there's a great delight around that, where we can be empowered in our own backyard, so to speak, even if we do live in apartments or we do live in other places, where we can actually, connect around the, community really around food. I think that's an exciting future thing I look forward to more and more, even if it is born out of maybe necessity in some cases.
Well, it's interesting because I think so much of those things that we consider to be innovative or future-looking are also a return to the past in so many ways, perhaps with a bit of technology that augments it, whether it's about, we've got an app where we can grow stuff on our balcony, we can grow different stuff to our neighbours, and then we can share it through this app or whatever it is. So there's this combination or this tension or this beautiful interweaving of stripping away some of the innovations that perhaps haven't led us down great paths, intertwined with.
That's right. It's not always technological. I mean, techno-optimists always say technology is the solution. But look at our beautiful First Nations, Indigenous people and their systems of knowledge around food. It's extraordinary. And their leadership is very much needed in this space because, there's a huge, incredible ancestral history of connection to land and sustainable farming practices and land practices that we can learn from in moving forward into a world that's not. So technology is not always the solution in that sort of mechanical way. It can be technology in different ways, and that's exciting.
I guess it can be it can be thinking in the way that we think about things as well. So I know that culinary biodiversity is one of your sort of touchstones. Can you talk about what that means to you?
I think, but again, it's represented by the real food rebels who are seeking to sort of preserve seeds. And so that's why we form collaboration with Slow Food Melbourne, Slow Food Australia, who are, they've got a fantastic project called the ARC Taste Project. So that is collecting seeds and from all different types of varieties of plants and food that that need to be catalogued and preserved, because often, in the mass consumption chains, to feed everybody, we sometimes lose biodiversity because we've got to produce at mass scale. In these sort of very large corporate environments that facilitate that. And sometimes, obviously we do need to want to feed everyone, but there's also importance around preservation of variety, because mono food and mono farming can also be not good, because we know that from a just a soil regeneration basis. So again, it's not demonizing anyone in this process, in my view. I mean, there's obviously situations where, you know, if people aren't doing the right thing, that's a different story. But collaboration and working together is the most important thing, because everyone's in this. And more collaboration, in my view, is really needed to create that possibility of future as well, particularly around biodiversity. It's not just, you know, it's a conversation and a dialogue, and that's what we're hoping to stimulate around. This is what this does. So I think Slow Food have, in their contribution to the exhibition, we've worked with them to really look at some of the messages that they're trying to get out there around, you know, preserving food and traditional practices and encouraging local sustainability actions and supporting local farming groups and all of those things that are very important as we move through this next phase, because we are in an adaptation phase. You know, we are adapting. We're kind of, there is elements of prevention which are around things at a much bigger political scale. So that's looking at, you know, the infrastructure pieces around renewables and those sort of things around emissions, which is the source of the problem. And then there are the adaptation strategies that filter down. And Gloop is probably an extreme adaptation strategy, you know, like, but it's also showing it's not so good. It's good and not so good. So, and that's the idea with this. But the real food rebels are the heart and soul. They're kind of a bit like the Rebel Alliance from Star Wars in a way. And I think people hopefully will connect with them. And they'll also be able to experience a great meal as well from the rebels as well, because they celebrate with wonderful food in their little section.
Ah, wow. I mean, I'm always wary to look for, you know, desired outcomes when we talk about art, but it does sound like your art is activist as well. I mean, how do you see that tension, and are there outcomes that you hope will come from this?
I'm not sure if I call myself an activist. I mean, I definitely am. I definitely respond to pressing issues, absolutely. And I do feel that art's a wonderful medium to explore things that can be serious, that scare us, and that we can engage with. I think it creates a little bit of, there's definitely, people might be provoked into not liking this or reacting against it, and that's a good thing, because then they can really explore their own feelings about certain topics. That's what it's supposed to do. But yeah, I think we do serve a little role in creating the space for that, for people to then interact with and respond to, especially around food, like memories of food, and, you know, being able to, you know, like connect with things that inspire them about the technology, and maybe where we don't want to go or where we do want to go. I think part of that is the process we went through with the students from Swinburne, who I should definitely mention because they are part of the exhibition. We tasked them with this scenario to actually respond to food spaces and food systems that they have designed around. So they're Masters of Design and Architecture. And we took them through the Futureology process for the past semester, and that's what their challenge was. And so they were challenged with creating spaces and places of dining experiences and colouring experiences. So what they've come up with is really interesting, because they are the next generation. They will potentially have to design around new food experiences and spaces, because our food systems might change because of climate change in some regards, or even technology.
Anna, I'd love to learn more about you and how you came to be working in this way. You know, you've got this background in law and working against poverty. Tell us about that and what drew you along this path.
I think, well, that was a fair while ago now, where I worked with an organisation that is at their fledgling stage, was working on an anti-poverty campaign with them, and in the US as well. They went on to go on to do some other campaigns in a fairly large way. So I think I was definitely inspired by my interactions and touch points with that organisation. I guess I just, in terms of just, I don't know how I ended up here really, but I'm a curious person, and in our collective, like I said, there's a lot, there's lots of us in the collective, with different backgrounds. I just love the intersection of things around. I've always gravitated towards innovation in whatever force it is. I do have an arts background. I did start out in the arts and theatre making. I attended the VCA, so I do have a background in sort of arts, and also then practiced in the law. And then, I guess I just am a person who is curious about the world, and that's driven most of my interest in various things that I explore and then connect with others around. I guess I do want to see the world become better, like everyone, and I think the future does belong to everyone, and I think that people have a say in that, and I feel like if we can use what we have, and so in our collective, Ace Salama, who's my lead artist, co-founder of Futureology, I mean, he's very passionate about these issues as well, and we talk about them all the time. So I think it's just a desire to see, our specific, skill set is artistic, creative practice. I think law is creative. I draw on that a lot with that part of my brain as well, and we use all of these melting kind of interdisciplinary things to then express it through this way. But other people do it in other ways, and whatever, I just feel like whatever you have, whatever skills you have, you can use those to make even a small change to every day. You can make a better future in some form by just doing different choices every day. And people will do that at different levels. It doesn't mean you have to go out and become, a politician, but some people may take that pathway. But if you, connect with your local sustainability group, you can do a lot of change locally. And I think that's what people want. They want to, even in the overwhelmingness of a massive problem, to know that you can do something and you can do it every day, and that you are going to make a difference every single day. That's what gets me up in the morning.
Yeah, that's really powerful. And I guess one thread I see through what you do is this belief in the power of storytelling. I mean, you spoke about the intelligence or genius and interconnectedness of of Indigenous thinking, and of course that's so bound up in storytelling and shared narratives and narratives that are passed on and can be acted upon. I mean, do you feel like if there was more storytelling in the world that would be a positive?
100%. I think we are absolute story creatures, and we derive meaning from everything. I think that's very human. It's very deep in us. I think we are going to go through a bit of a challenging time because AI will challenge some of our shared reality because of the nature of it, because it's just something that we're already seeing what they call hallucinations in some of the outputs that are coming out of the use of those platforms. So we do need to be wary of, I think that's one of our biggest challenges with stories. Like we know frameworks for, formats of stories. So there's different disciplines in art. We traditionally have those. But when storytelling gets in the way of, I guess, factual things that we need to have as a shared truth, we also need to be wary of that, I think. In terms of the contribution and the incredible history that First Nations people bring to storytelling, it's absolutely necessary. They are incredibly, there is a deep ancestral history, and we've got a lot to learn around how we really embrace storytelling in our everyday lives, especially around things like food systems, for example. And I think, we should be open to being to all intersection of these knowledge systems together, because I think that is actually going to create a better world in the end.
Yeah, I guess it makes me think that if we thought of food systems as more narrative and less transaction, then that would be a vast improvement.
Absolutely. Like if you know where food comes from. I mean, in fact, a good example of that is years and years ago, I started a food club, we called it, just to connect with friends. There was a bunch of us that we were all single and we didn't really know many people in Melbourne, and we just formed a little club where we would get together over a meal, and we would have a theme for that particular meal, and everyone would go away and research their particular cuisine, and then they would present that cuisine and talk about where it came from. And I think we need to do a bit more of that, particularly as we approach food insecurity, and people are struggling out there around that particular issue as well. And we're not in an isolated place or nation. It might seem that we are very fortunate in Australia to have an abundant food bowl and system, but our actions also affect other. We're all interconnected to different nations out there who are producing raw food, raw materials, and anything that affects the weather systems there will affect potentially our not only their economic systems but also ours as well. So having some empathy for others in different nations and supporting initiatives that, the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, that can absolutely look at the inequalities in some of our food systems and, put our mind to maybe putting some support around systems of aid or whatever that is, maybe, that will actually help everyone. And it's something we all have to be a bit more mindful of, this interconnected concept of we're interconnected through food in so many different ways, and being more aware of those systems, whatever touch point you want to make an improvement, will help everyone.
Yeah, no, I think that's, so well said. I think it can be overwhelming to think like that, but I think it can also be empowering. And I think, you've expressed that really well. And I reckon maybe that's one of the things that people will get from the exhibition.
Hopefully. Also to have some fun.
Fun is always good.
Yeah. I mean, we're also raising, like with our ticket sales, we're also raising some funds for Food Bank of Victoria. So we're very mindful of some of the food insecurity issues in our own city. So that's also what we're trying to do as well, just to make sure that we're trying to help others in this process.
Fantastic. So we'll put the links to the exhibition in the show notes, and a link to Futureology because, so fascinating, so much reading and thinking to do. A.Ray, thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat with us today. Really appreciate it, and always love having my brain exploded, so thanks for that as well.
Absolute pleasure. Anytime. We like brain explosions at Futureology, so you're very welcome to join us on this adventure.
Yeah, I'm on. This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinenat.deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This